Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to my prediction for the upcoming death battle between Jotaro Kujo and Kenshiro. In this video, I will be going over the characters' backstories, their powers and capabilities, why these characters were paired against each other, and finally, who I think is going to win. As for what I researched for this match, for Jojo I covered all of the anime episodes and manga chapters in which he was featured. For Kenshiro, I covered the majority of his anime and manga appearances. Unfortunately, I ran out of time, but I still covered the majority of his canon and all of his major fights. As such, I am still pretty confident regarding who I think is going to win. As always, if you want to debate, I am all ears, but I expect evidence to support your arguments. With all that said, let's get into it. First up is Jotaro Kujo, the Stardust Crusader. Jotaro's origin is, in some ways, incredibly simple, and in other ways, not so much. Jotaro, or Jojo to his friends, was a bit of a punk growing up in Japan. He didn't respect his teachers in school, and he often picked fights with people. However, underneath his thuggish appearance was a heart of gold. Jojo despised injustice, and he would beat down anyone who would dare pick on the weak in front of him. However, one day something strange happened to Jojo. While he was picking a fight with some thugs, his opponents suddenly started getting beat up by what Jojo could only guess was an evil spirit. This spirit seemed to be haunting Jojo, so, afraid that the spirit would hurt innocent people, Jojo insisted on the cops locking him up in jail until such time as he figured out what was going on. That's when his grandfather, Joseph, showed up. He explained that this evil spirit was actually a stand, a supernatural/psychic projection that only a handful of people in the world possessed. And the reason Jojo had suddenly gained this stand was a rather complex story. Basically, there was this vampire called Dio who had possessed the body of Jotaro's great-great-grandfather. Dio had been shot by this magic bow and arrow thing that grants people stands, and this somehow caused everyone in the Jojo family tree to gain stands. This would be fine, as stands give a bunch of awesome powers, except in order to control your stand, you have to have a strong fighting spirit, which was something that Jotaro's mom did not have. As such, her stand just made her ill, and slowly started killing her. Jojo wasn't cool with this, so he set out on a massive quest to kill Dio and hopefully restore his mother. He defeated many foes along the way, including Dio himself, all while improving his ability to use his stand in combat. He would later go on to become a marine biologist while fighting crime in his free time. That's more or less the story of Jotaro Kujo. Now let's talk about what he can do. Jojo fights almost exclusively through the use of his stand, which is called Star Platinum. Now let's quickly cover the nature and rules of stands. Stands are described as guardian spirits that stand users psychically project. Stands will automatically attempt to protect their users from all manner of harm. As spirits, stands have a number of special properties. For one, they are completely invisible. The only people who can see stands are other stand users. In addition, stands can only be damaged by other stands, which is good because any damage a stand receives is reflected onto its wielder. So if a stand is killed, so is its user. But, like I said, stands can only be damaged by other stands. This makes them really useful as meat shields, as they can block bullets and explosions without difficulty. In addition, stands can become tangible or intangible at will. This means they can phase through matter whenever they feel like it. Jojo's stand likes to use this ability to reach into people's chests and stop their hearts. The last notable power that all stands share is that they can alter their size and shape at will. This allows stands to shrink down to a microscopic size, which has typically been used to send the stands inside of the bodies of their enemies in order to screw with their internal organs. However, aside from those general rules, stands are actually highly diverse in terms of their powers and capabilities. Jojo's stand, Star Platinum, specializes in brutal close-range combat. It boasts excellent ratings in strength, speed, precision, and stamina. Its only shortcoming is that it is very much so a close-range stand, which means it can only be used effectively within 2 meters of Jojo. If Star Platinum moves beyond that range, its power diminishes significantly. But before I get ahead of myself, let's look at the unique techniques and powers used by Star Platinum. Its main technique, if you can even call it that, is the Stand Rush, in which Star Platinum rushes down its opponent and bombards them with a ridiculous number of punches. Its next technique is called the Star Finger, in which it rapidly stretches two of its fingers, which then smash into the opponent. This technique is deceptively powerful, and can even penetrate armor. Star Platinum also boasts greatly enhanced senses. It can see objects on the microscopic level, and it can even detect a background image in a photograph that advanced computers were unable to find. Some of the other random powers Star Platinum has include Super Breath, letting JoJo speak underwater, and letting JoJo fly. But easily Star Platinum's greatest ability is known as the World, in which it stops time. The only people who can move during the stopped time is JoJo and Star Platinum. Now, JoJo can only stop time for a maximum of 5 seconds, and after time resumes, JoJo has to wait a certain number of seconds before he can stop again. However, thanks to Star Platinum's drastically superhuman speed, 5 seconds for him is a long time for his opponents. Speaking of which, let's look at base stats. JoJo doesn't really have much in the way of superhuman strength, but Star Platinum is another story. Its best feat came when it managed to hold up the weight of a massive steamroller that Dio dropped on JoJo. Steamrollers like this can weigh as much as 59 tons. If that wasn't enough, Dio was also pushing the steamroller downwards with a bombardment of punches, which is pretty significant considering Dio is strong enough to pick up and throw a 59-ton steamroller. Just matching that force would require Star Platinum to be exerting anywhere between 59 and 118 tons of force. In terms of speed, again, JoJo isn't really noteworthy, but Star Platinum is one of the fastest stands in existence. It can deflect and even catch bullets, and it can move faster than the eye can track. And when you actually slow down the footage and count it out, Star Platinum appears to punch at a rate of around 50 punches per second. Also, side note, I've seen the arguments for Star Platinum being faster than Light, and I do not buy them at all. Just thought I'd mention that. In terms of durability, Star Platinum is very tough. Of course, against anything that isn't a stand, Star Platinum is completely invulnerable, but even when facing other stands, he boasts some of the best defense in the series. Generally speaking, if he can react fast enough to punch an incoming attack, then he can completely nullify it, and even on those occasions when an attack slips through, Star Platinum has never been seriously damaged. This is due in no small part to the fact that JoJo's pain tolerance is through the roof. He has been set on fire, impaled, and even suffered multiple bone fractures, and yet JoJo has always kept his cool. In terms of intelligence, Jotaro is an analytical and cunning strategist. Almost all of his battles against other stand users have required him to outsmart some ridiculous power or trick in order to achieve victory. And JoJo's eternal cool-headedness ensures that he's always fighting with a strategy in mind. In terms of particular combat feats, JoJo has bested a wide variety of stand users over the course of his career, including the nigh unstoppable vampire and resident meme lord Dio Brando. With strategy, time stopping, and an invisible bodyguard on his side, there are few foes Jotaro Kujo cannot handle. Now let's talk weaknesses. The biggest weakness of Star Platinum is that it is very short range. It can only deal legitimate damage to a foe if they are within 2 meters of JoJo, and while it's technically true that Star Platinum can move beyond that 2 meter radius, doing so causes its power to drop drastically. As such, long-range combat has proven extremely effective against him. Also, while time stopping is a pretty ridiculous power, JoJo can only stop time for 5 seconds, and after stopping time, he has to wait several seconds before he can do so again. During that time, he is vulnerable. In addition, while Star Platinum is pretty good at protecting JoJo, it has its limits, and should too many attacks fly at JoJo simultaneously, Star Platinum simply cannot block them all. Also, the power of a stand is somewhat connected to the wielder's breathing, so if JoJo cannot breathe, then Star Platinum will weaken. And lastly, JoJo lacks formal combat training. He may have picked up some skills from his time as a street fighter, but that's it. So put JoJo against a long-range combatant with formal combat training and some means to counter time stopping, and JoJo is almost certain to fail. That's everything I know about Jotaro. Now let's look at Kenshiro, the savior of the Century's End. This story is literally just Mad Max with Kung Fu. Kenshiro was an orphan who got adopted by the Grand Master of a super deadly martial art called Hokuto Shinken, otherwise known as the Divine Fist of the North Star. He taught Kenshiro this art, and the kid proved to be quite good at it, to the point that Ken was eventually dubbed the one true successor of the martial art. Things went pretty good for Kenshiro for a little while. He had a cool rival, he had some cool adopted older brothers, and he even got himself a fiancé. But then the nuclear apocalypse happened, which turned the entire planet into a desert wasteland ruled by tyrannical warlords. If that wasn't bad enough, Ken's rivals stole Ken's girlfriend, and most of Ken's older brothers turned evil. Kenshiro wasn't too pleased about this turn of events, so he spent the rest of his days hunting down his former friends and family while slaughtering every evil warlord who dared to get in his way. He did such a good job of saving the innocent that he was eventually dubbed the savior of the century's end. He even eventually saved his girlfriend. That's pretty much Kenshiro's story. It's not that complicated. Now let's look at what he can do. Kenshiro's abilities started off as pretty simple and straightforward, and then became more convoluted and vague as the series progressed. But first we'll start with the basics. The Fist of the North Star is an assassin's martial art that focuses entirely on pressure point combat. But unlike other similar martial arts, when Kenshiro pokes your pressure points, your body self-destructs from the inside out and explodes. As in, if you're a human person and Kenshiro lands a single poke on you, then you are already dead. His catchphrase is literally, "You are already dead." That's the most death battle relevant part of his martial art, but he can actually do all sorts of things to you with his poking. However, I won't bother going over all the things he can do with pressure points, as there's just way too much to cover and most of it isn't very useful in a death battle. But just to give you an idea, if Kenshiro hits your pressure points, he can do everything from making you explode, to wiping your memory, to curing your blindness. Yeah. And that's just off the top of my head. Outside of the Divine Fist, Kenshiro has the uncanny ability to master any martial art technique after seeing it just once, which has only made him an even more skilled fighter. Again, many of these techniques are simply inferior to the Divine Fist, so there's not much point in me going over them. Just know that he's learned a lot. In addition, as the series progressed, it was revealed that Ken has access to ki-based techniques. He can release a pulse of ki energy to stop incoming projectiles, and he can fire ki blasts with either enough force to stop a train or with enough precision to hit pressure points. Also, he did once use ki to levitate, but he only used it once, and the implication seemed to be that it was only possible because there were two conflicting sources of ki energy. But I figured I'd mention it nonetheless. However, Kenshiro's ultimate technique is called Muso Tensai, or Unconscious Transmigration. This ability was a pain in the ass to figure out because they never explain how it works at all. But using context clues, I was eventually able to piece together the gist of what it does. Using this technique, Kenshiro creates over a dozen illusionary duplicates of himself, which he constantly shifts between in order to hide his location. This creates the illusion that he's able to phase through attacks. He's not actually intangible, his body is still there, as evidenced by the fact that he has been punched while using it. However, since Ken only needs to land one hit when he fights, being able to hide which direction he's coming from is a significant advantage. But that's not the end of Kenshiro's abilities. In the 1986 Guide to the Fist of the North Star, the top 50 secrets about Kenshiro were revealed, and I'll quickly go through the more notable ones. His hearing is sensitive enough to hear a whisper 2 kilometers away. He can see the aura of a living creature, even in complete darkness. He has a sense of smell as good as a hound. He can run 100 meters in 9 seconds. He can throw 50 punches in 3 seconds while using his 100 crack fist technique. He can jump 9 meters in a single bound. He can hold his breath for 53 minutes. He has extremely high resistance to poison. His body can remain strong for 3 months without eating. He can go a whole week without sleeping. His favorite weapons are nunchucks, 6-section stabs, and throwing knives, and his primary hobby is developing new secret techniques. Those are Kenshiro's various abilities. Now let's look at base stats. In terms of strength, Kenshiro is monstrously strong. He regularly smashes through stone and steel with ease. However, his best strength feat comes from when he lifted this massive boulder in order to seal up a hole in a dam. By my estimates, this thing could weigh as much as 342.8 tons. In terms of speed, Kenshiro regularly moves faster than the eye can track, and, as I said earlier, he can punch at a rate of 50 punches per 3 seconds, or 16.7 punches per second. In terms of durability, Kenshiro has been blasted by a tank without injury, he was smashed over the head with a stone pillar and was totally fine, and he even once survived a skyscraper collapsing on top of him. In terms of intelligence, Kenshiro is certainly a genius when it comes to martial arts. He doesn't typically rely upon complex strategies, and instead prefers to overcome foes just through his sheer skill and power. And on those rare occasions when Kenshiro is bested, he always learns from his mistakes and figures out counter strategies to win next time. Because of this, Kenshiro has never lost to anyone twice in a row. In terms of particular combat feats, Kenshiro has bested every single martial arts master in the post-apocalyptic world, and he regularly takes down entire armies on his own. With so much raw power backed by one of the deadliest martial arts in fictional history, there is every reason to fear the name of Kenshiro. Now let's talk weaknesses. Kenshiro's biggest flaw is that he doesn't do very well against foes who are immune to pressure point combat. This was how he lost at the hands of Souther. Furthermore, while he is highly resistant to blunt force, piercing attacks, even from mundane weapons like crossbows, have proven perfectly capable of harming him. Also, he is almost exclusively a melee combatant, and while his key attacks give him a little bit of range, it still isn't that much. And while Kenshiro's Muso Tensei technique is pretty good in a one-on-one martial arts battle, it simply isn't that good anywhere else. His physical body is still there, it's just hidden by illusions, so if you hit him with an attack that hits all the duplicates, or if you can see through illusions, then the technique is pretty much rendered useless. The warlord Kaiu was able to counter Muso Tensei simply by using a technique that gave Kenshiro vertigo, which tricked him into revealing his location. And lastly, while Kenshiro may seem like a monster, he's still only human, and thus suffers from many of the same vulnerabilities as any other mortal man. That's everything I know about these characters. Before I get to my prediction, here's all the similarities and/or reasons for this matchup. Both are taciturn heroes who prefer to let their fists do the talking. Both like to bombard foes with punches while making utterly ridiculous noises. Both have wandered the world on foot while on a quest to defeat some super powerful villain. Both are from series that had their start in the 1980s. Both are heavily motivated to protect their loved ones. Both were inspired by Western action stars. And both are buff, over-the-top anime protagonists. That's all the reasons for the match. Now for my prediction. I think the winner of this death battle will be Jotaro Kujo. This was a pretty easy match to call. Some people seem to think that Kenshiro stands a chance, but Jojo can stop time. That means he wins. Kenshiro may be tough, but he's still human, and he can be killed a dozen different ways once time is stopped. Just off the top of my head, Jojo could rip out his eyes, stab him repeatedly with the Starfinger technique, or, reach into his chest and stop his heart. Some people seem to think that Kenshiro's ki will protect him, but that's not how that works. His ki doesn't act like a force field. It doesn't protect him from harm at all. He can launch ki at an incoming attacker, but he can't do that during a time stop. Even his Muso Tensei won't do him any good. It doesn't make him intangible, it just hides the location of his body. And once time is stopped, Star Platinum's super speed and super vision will let him locate Kenshiro easily. Heck, even without the time stop, this is not an easy fight for Kenshiro. To be fair, when we're comparing him to Jojo, Kenshiro dominates in all categories. But in order to get to Jojo, he has to get past Star Platinum, which is something he simply cannot do. Sure, Kenshiro is stronger than Star Platinum, and he is overall more deadly, but neither of those things mean anything because Kenshiro can't damage Star Platinum. Kenshiro is not a stand, which means, for the purposes of this match, Star Platinum is invincible. And since Kenshiro isn't even a stand user, that means Star Platinum is invisible too. And that's not even to mention Star Platinum's superior speed. As such, in order to get to Jojo, Kenshiro has to get past an opponent that is invincible, invisible, intangible, and faster than him. And this entire time, he's going to be getting bombarded with attacks from Star Platinum. So this is a very uphill battle for Kenshiro. Throw in the time stop and it just becomes impossible. Don't get me wrong, I'm not underestimating Kenshiro here. I get that he could win this fight with a single poke, but here's the thing. Ultimately, this is a match decided by who can land their insta-kill move first. And to be clear, Jojo can easily insta-kill Kenshiro. There is nothing stopping Star Platinum from reaching into Kenshiro's head and crushing his brain. So Jojo can insta-win this match if given the chance, and his time stopping gives him that chance. Kenshiro's tough, and he's fast, but he's human, and he can't stop time. This is a pretty clear-cut match as far as I'm concerned. As such, I am 90% certain that Jotaro Kujo is going to win this death battle. In terms of my Devil's Advocate section, the only way I could see Kenshiro winning is if they found a feat that proves that Kenshiro is leagues faster than anything Star Platinum is capable of. Kenshiro has to be fast enough to kill Jojo before time stops. That is the only way he can win. Anything less than that, and Kenshiro is doomed. That's it for my Devil's Advocate section, which means we've reached the end of the video. Out of Season 5, this was easily the most enjoyable match to research. I genuinely enjoyed watching JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, and while I didn't really enjoy Fist of the North Star, it hasn't aged very well, I'm glad to have experienced it just for how integral it was for anime history. That said, I actually like Kenshiro more as a character than Jotaro. Jotaro just never really clicked with me. I liked Joseph Joestar a lot more. Regardless, I hope this death battle is fun and satisfying for all you guys, and I look forward to finding out what the next time is. As for the ending pun... I'm so bad at guessing puns. I guess I'll go with... Jojo was the star of this platinum match. Why not? Anyway, like if you enjoyed the video, comment if you got something to say, subscribe if you want to see more, and as always, have a fantastic day.